Hey guys, this is Dorian Day back for ADSR Sound, and today we're going to make a modern future house bass with Serum. Now today's video comes with a pack you're going to need to make the presets. A link can be found in the description of the video, and while you're on the way there, make sure you subscribe to the ADSR YouTube channel so you don't miss any of my now weekly Serum tutorials. Inside of the pack you'll find the Ableton project from the video, the kick sample I used, the MIDI file I used in the video, the final preset I made, and both wavetables you'll need to make the preset from scratch. Once you have that downloaded, load the kick into a sampler in your DAW and drag the MIDI file into an empty instrument track and load Serum. Okay, now before we start, I want to give you a little history on the sound. What's currently being called a deep or future house bass actually originated from a style called UK garage. This is one reason it can be difficult to find information on this sound, is because you have to search for the correct terms. The name of the traditional UK garage bass is the hollow bass, and it's the only reliable way to find lots of information on the sound. The bass is made using FM synthesis and is rather simple to make a basic patch. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make a modern version of the sound, being popularly called the future house bass, which can be heard in countless beatport chopping songs at this point. So how can we do this in Serum? Well, although Serum isn't a full FM synth, it does allow you to do FM on one OSC by another. We are going to make use of this feature, but we're going to be a little more clever in achieving our hollow sound to save resources. Instead of using two sine waves and FM to create a hollow sound, we're going to start with hollow sounding waveforms and use our extra OSC for FM synthesis to create the modern future house sound. Okay, start by turning on both oscillators and loading the tables. Table 1 in OSC A and Table 2 in OSC B. Okay, now let's listen through to each one of them. The table in OSCB is the hollow table for creating the bass timbre. There's 8 frames, and they're all intended to be somewhat hollow sounding except for the saw. Now let's listen to the second one. These are more harmonically rich and thick frames for using as an FM source for the future house sound. With these set up, let's start making the sound. For now, set the wavetable position to the far left on both oscillators. Set OSCB 1 octave below. Now turn on the sub. Set it to a square wave, 1 octave below. Now no matter which hollow waveform we have selected, we have a solid square supporting the bottom end of the bass line. Next, on both oscillators, set unison to 5 so that we can detune. But set the detune to the far left and blend pretty much where it came default. All right, set random all the way to the left on both. And we're going to add an amp later after turning on the noise. So go analog, ARP, circuit, turn the level down, and we're going to have to put an envelope on that in a moment. Okay, the next thing we need to do is set the warp mode on oscillator B to FN from A so that we can get FM from this oscillator onto B, which is going to bring in the bright future house bass sound. So let's start setting our envelopes. On envelope 1, set the attack to 0. Set the release to 200, sustain the same. Now we have a little bit of release on our bass. Notice it's very bright and thick. This is really important to get a bright, plucky sound. That increases it even more with FM. All right, now let's look at envelope 2. Set the attack to 0. Set the decay to 3.5 seconds. Actually, you know what? I missed one step. You need to turn on the filter. Keep it on MG low 12. So we're going to keep it on the standard low pass filter, and we're going to set all the noise sources to it, and set the cutoff all the way down, and leave everything else the same. Okay, now set the sustain of envelope 2 to 50%, and the release to 400 milliseconds. You can click the lock right here so you can always see what's going on. And we want to make the slope steeper so that it's more of a sharp pluck. Next, we're going to add this to the cutoff of the filter, and it's going to be of a depth slightly less than halfway. Now we have a pluck that occurs rather quickly and starts to decay very fast, but then glides the rest of the way down. And thus we get a small amount of bite on the bass. Next, let's set envelope 3, set the attack to instant, decay to 43 milliseconds, sustain to 50%, and the release can stay standard. Put this on the wavetable position of oscillator A with just a little bit of depth. We're going to use a macrolator to control the amount that this affects this depth of the wavetable position knob. Change the slope of the envelope as well, similar to how we did on envelope 2. Okay, now let's start working with the LFOs. We're going to use 2 LFOs. The first LFO we're going to set to a sine wave by clicking on the preset menu and going to sine. Set this to a rate of 4 bars and put it onto the the fine pitch control of oscillator A with a depth of 9. This adds a little bit of modulation to the pitch and makes the sound more organic so that it doesn't sound the same every time you press the key. It slowly evolves over each of the successive notes. Now we're going to create an envelope out of LFO2, and you do this by dragging the first dot up and the second control point or the center control point all the way to the bottom right, and then decreasing the slope of the curve with this little green dot right here, or the center blue dot. Next, set the rate all the way to the right and set the mode to envelope. We're going to put this on the cutoff of the filter 100% and the noise 100%. Next, let's add velocity modulation to the patch so that notes with higher velocity sound brighter and more powerful. We're going to add this to the filter cutoff just a tiny bit, little like 7, 6, 7, drive something about 10 or 13. If you're not careful with this, it can be overpowering because most MIDI notes I think are around 50, 60 or above. So just imagine that you're putting at least half of whatever depth you set automatically, like without even trying, unless you're being pretty careful with your velocity notes. So with that done, let's start setting our macro knobs to get a greater amount of control over our sound. You can hear what it sounds like right now. But we need to do more things to complete the sound. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to set macro 1 to the detune and randomness of both oscillators and set the depth to slightly less than 50, maybe 43 or so. Now when we turn this knob, which I call blur, you get detune and stereo spread as you increase. Okay, with that done, we're going to move on to macro 2. Add macro 2 to the rate of LFO 2 all the way, 100%. So now as we turn this knob, we get a brighter, more sustained sound. Okay, next you need to go into the mod matrix and set macro 2 as an auxiliary source for LFO2 on the noise amp level. So this basically scales how much LFO2 is affecting the noise level even further. But you can hear at the high end, that's still not enough to control how much noise is actually being added. It's still pretty noisy. So you need to increase the level of the noise amp, add macro 2, and set the depth in the opposite direction, about 40 or 50. Now, as we increase macro 2, we're increasing the sustain of this pluck. So we're increasing how much the filter opens up. We're increasing the length that this noise pluck occurs. But we need to dial that down as much as possible, and that's what this knob does. So as those other factors are increasing, we're trying to bring the amount of noise down as much as possible so that it's not overpowering. And you can hear how that's starting to work. It might be too much. Maybe let's set it to 30. I think that's still too much noise. So I think like -35, -40 is a good starting point, depending on how much noise you want. I prefer a slightly more clean tone. I had it set pretty deep on my own personal patch, like maybe like 60. So this is a part where you can have some discretion. But also this needs to control the most powerful or important aspect of this patch, which is the FM on oscillator B from OSCA. And you can set the depth to 100% or scale this if it's becoming too intense, but you can hear the impact here. And that's pretty much where the future house bass sound starts to come, and you can alter it by moving the wavetable position of oscillator A. And then you control how much of that you actually want happening by controlling the depth over here. I'm gonna make it a little overpowering because it sounds really cool with blurred. Listen. So name this macro byte and set it just midway for now. Next, we're gonna make macro 3 the cutoff all the way. And then set macro 4 to the decay of envelope 3. Increase just a little bit. Go into the mod matrix. Set macro 4 as an auxiliary source for envelope 3 on wavetable position of A, that is, right here. Sorry, I don't know if I said macro 3. I meant macro 4. So this controls the amount that envelope 3 modulates wavetable position and induces an aggressive sound as the frames are morphed through quickly. So this, we set 3 on wavetable position earlier, and I call this twisted. So you can hear as twisted is turned all the way to the right, it becomes a little slightly more aggressive. And it depends on where you are in the wavetable position. And if you're, depending on how drastic the overall effect is, like it might be better to set it a little more drastically. Okay. That pretty much finishes the patch off. We just need to set it into mono mode right here and go ahead and, I guess, test it out. I'm going to bring everything down. All right, and I'm going to start my kick. And now the bass. Some reverb. And now I'm gonna mess around with the knobs for a couple minutes, showing you kind of the different ways to control the bass before we finish up here. Needless to say, you have quite a bit of control, even with just these 4 macros. And then once you start turning the wavetable position knobs and moving through the frames, the sound possibilities increase, tenfold at least. And try inserting your own frames, and all of a sudden you have an entirely new sound without really changing much else about the patch, which is what's so nice about this patch and Serum in general, is you can sort of just switch out the wavetables with anything you find ever in the future and have yourself a new patch. Okay, so that does it for this week's Serum tutorial. Make sure you subscribe to the channel before heading off to play with your new sounds. Once again, I'm Dorian Day here for ADSR Sounds. See you next time.